Leo was a boy who always saw the world in a slightly different way. He had bright, curious eyes and a smile that could light up the darkest room. But from the day he was born, life had not been easy for him. Leo was born with Down syndrome, a condition that made some everyday tasks harder for him than for other children. He learned to walk later than most kids, and his speech was slow, but he never stopped trying. He was determined, full of energy, and endlessly curious about the world around him. From the beginning, Leo's parents noticed that he had a particular fascination with sounds. Whenever someone played the radio or tapped on a glass, Leo's eyes would widen and he would focus intently, trying to understand the patterns of the sounds he heard. He was especially drawn to the piano. In the small living room of their home, where the old piano sat in the corner, Leo would spend hours just pressing the keys, listening to the different tones, even if the melodies he made were random and clumsy. His parents often watched him with a mixture of amusement and wonder, seeing the joy in his concentration and the way his face lit up with each note. Despite his cheerful nature, Leo faced challenges that made him different from other children. At school, he struggled to keep up with lessons, and many children found it easy to mock him for his mistakes. They would whisper and giggle when he answered questions slowly or fumbled with his words. Sometimes they would even mimic him in the hallways, making faces or repeating what he said in a mocking tone. At first, these moments hurt Leo deeply, though he rarely showed it. He was a sensitive child, but he also had a resilience that made him keep moving forward. Even when others laughed at him, Leo's parents were loving and protective, but they knew they could not shield him from the world forever. They wanted him to grow strong and confident, to learn that his differences did not define his worth. They encouraged him to try new things, to explore his interests, and to focus on what he loved. Music became his safe space, a world where he could express himself without judgment. Every day after school, Leo would rush to the piano, pressing the keys softly at first, then with more confidence as he experimented with melodies. His small fingers sometimes struggled to reach the right notes, but he never gave up. In the neighborhood, not everyone was kind. Some children were cruel in ways that adults often overlooked. They would laugh when Leo tripped over his own feet, or when he struggled to tie his shoelaces. At times, they would call him names or whisper insults just loud enough for him to hear. Even some adults would shake their heads or sigh impatiently when Leo took longer to do something simple. The world seemed to expect him to fail, to be less than others, and that expectation sometimes made Leo doubt himself. Yet, even in these moments of discouragement, he found comfort in the piano. The keys did not judge him. They responded to his touch, his effort, and his growing sense of rhythm. Leo's music was not perfect, but it was full of life. His parents noticed that when he played, he seemed to forget the teasing and the laughter. His face would glow with concentration, and he would hum along with the notes, lost in a world that belonged entirely to him. Sometimes his mother would sit beside him, gently guiding his hands to the correct keys, praising him for small achievements. Other times his father would bring home simple sheet music for children and encourage him to try the notes, cheering when he managed even a short sequence correctly. These moments built Leo's confidence bit by bit, and though the progress was slow, it was steady. School, however, remained a place of challenge. Teachers often tried to be patient, but the pace of regular lessons was difficult for Leo. He would finish exercises late, sometimes confused by instructions, and sometimes he would need repeated explanations to understand what others grasped quickly. The children who were unkind often took advantage of these moments, snickering when he made mistakes or whispering jokes at his expense. Yet Leo carried a quiet strength within him. Deep down, he refused to let their laughter stop him from trying, from learning, or from pursuing the things he loved. One day, during a school assembly, the music teacher noticed Leo lingering near the piano in the classroom. He had been tapping a rhythm quietly to himself while the other students practiced. The teacher watched as Leo's hands moved clumsily but purposefully over the keys. Something about his focus, the intensity in his expression, and the way he seemed to feel the music struck the teacher. She approached him gently and said, "Would you like to try playing a piece for me?" Leo hesitated, nervous about performing in front of an adult, but then he nodded. He pressed a few keys tentatively and the teacher smiled. She encouraged him to keep going, and as he played, even imperfectly, there was a spark of something beautiful in the sound he created. It was moments like these that reminded Leo's parents and teachers that he had potential far beyond what people expected. They saw a boy who, despite the mockery and the difficulties, had a love for music that was genuine and strong. They encouraged him to practice more, to explore different songs, and to find ways to express himself through the piano. Leo took this encouragement seriously. Every evening he would sit at the piano, sometimes for hours, experimenting with the sounds, trying to replicate the melodies he heard on the radio or in songs his parents played. The neighborhood children, however, continued to tease him. They did not yet understand the power of patience, persistence, or talent hidden behind the laughter. They laughed at the way he moved, the way he spoke, and even the way he smiled. Leo would sometimes walk home feeling the weight of their mockery, but he never let it completely defeat him. He had discovered a world in the piano where laughter had no place, a place where his efforts could turn into something beautiful, a place where he could be proud of himself. Over time, Leo's family began to notice changes. His fingers became more confident on the keys and his sense of rhythm improved. He began to recognize patterns in the music and could play short songs from memory. Though the journey was slow and often frustrating, each small victory was a triumph for Leo. His parents celebrated every success, no matter how minor it seemed to others. They knew that for Leo, each correct note, each completed melody, was a demonstration of courage, determination, and talent. Even in the face of mockery, Leo found ways to hold on to hope. He began to understand that the laughter of others did not define him or his abilities. He had something they could not take away, a love for music that was deeply personal and unshakable. Sometimes, when the children teased him, he would retreat to the piano at home, letting the music wash over him, reminding himself that there was more to life than their laughter. His parents, seeing the way he clung to music, arranged for him to take more formal lessons. They found a patient teacher who understood Leo's needs and who encouraged him without judgment. Under this guidance, Leo learned not just to press keys randomly, but to play simple songs with meaning and expression. Each lesson was a mix of triumphs and setbacks, but Leo faced them all with a determination that inspired everyone around him. Slowly, the laughter of others began to feel less important. What mattered most was the music he created and the joy it brought him. Even with these small victories, Leo knew the world outside his home could be harsh. Yet he continued to push forward, finding comfort in the rhythm of the piano and in the encouragement of his family and teachers. Every day he practiced with a quiet determination, driven by a desire to show not just others but also himself that he could succeed, that he could create beauty in a world that often seemed intent on focusing on his limitations. Leo's story at this stage was a mixture of struggle, hope, and quiet triumph. The laughter of the children who mocked him was still there, but it no longer had the power to stop him. He had found a path that belonged entirely to him, a path paved with notes and melodies, patience and persistence. Even when the world seemed to dismiss him, he had the piano, and through it, he began to discover that his abilities were more powerful than anyone had imagined. This was just the beginning for Leo. The early years of struggle and mockery had shaped him, but they had not broken him. They had given him a sense of purpose, a reason to keep striving, and a love for music that would carry him through the challenges ahead. Even though he was different, even though people laughed at him, Leo had already begun to show the world that there was more to him than what they could see on the surface. Behind every clumsy movement, every slow word, and every mocked attempt, there was a boy with determination, talent, and a heart full of music. The laughter around him was loud, but Leo's passion was louder. And in that contrast, a story was beginning, one that would show everyone that true talent and courage often come from the most unexpected places. Leo's love for the piano grew stronger with each passing day. What had once been a quiet fascination had now become a true passion. Every morning before school, he would sit by the piano, running his fingers gently over the keys, humming softly to himself. Even small melodies made him smile. Sometimes he would experiment with different combinations of notes, creating sounds that no one had taught him. It was his way of expressing feelings that he could not always put into words. At school, Leo's progress did not go unnoticed. His music teacher had started to watch him closely. She noticed the way Leo's face would light up when he got a sequence right, the way his hands moved more confidently over time, and the way he listened carefully to every note he played. One afternoon, after a music lesson, she approached him quietly.
"Leo," she said gently, "would you like to play something for me?"
He hesitated for a moment, unsure if he could perform well in front of someone other than his parents. Then, with a small nod, he sat at the piano and began to play a simple melody. At first, the notes were uneven. He missed a few keys and sometimes played too softly or too loudly. But as he continued, something remarkable happened. His hands began to move with more confidence, and the melody started to sound like a song rather than random notes. The teacher's eyes widened. She had heard children play many times, but there was a certain emotion in Leo's music that stood out. It was not perfect, but it was honest, and it came from a place of pure feeling. She smiled and applauded quietly. "You have a real gift, Leo," she said, and for the first time he felt proud of himself. Encouraged by her words, Leo began to practice even more. After school, he would rush home, eager to sit at the piano. His parents noticed the change in him. He seemed more focused, more determined, and happier than ever before. Even though the teasing at school continued, it affected him less than it had before. Music had become his sanctuary, a place where the laughter of others could not reach him. One evening, Leo's father suggested that he try learning a simple song from a music book. Leo opened the pages carefully, his eyes scanning the notes. At first it looked confusing and he felt a little frustrated, but his father sat beside him, guiding his hands over the keys, showing him how to follow the rhythm. They worked slowly, step by step, until Leo could play the first line without mistakes. The sense of accomplishment on his face was priceless. For the first time, he realized that with patience and practice, he could achieve things that had seemed impossible before. School life, however, was not easy. Some children still laughed at him, especially when they saw him carrying the music book or practicing in the classroom. They whispered, made faces, and sometimes even tried to copy the way he played in a mocking manner. At first, it hurt. Leo would sometimes walk home feeling sad, thinking about the laughter and the whispers. But gradually, he learned to ignore them. The music taught him something important. What mattered most was his own joy, not the opinions of those who did not understand him. During one music class, the teacher decided to let Leo play in front of the class. The other students were curious but skeptical. They remembered the times when he had struggled with simple tasks and assumed he would fail again. As Leo sat at the piano, his hands trembling slightly, a few students snickered quietly. But then he began to play. The first notes were quiet, almost hesitant. But soon his confidence grew, and the melody started to flow. Each note was more confident than the last, and the room fell silent. Even the children who had mocked him before stopped whispering. They were listening, truly listening, to the music he created. Leo did not notice their surprise. He was lost in the rhythm, focused on the sound of each key under his fingers. When he finished, there was a pause. Then, the teacher clapped, her smile wide and genuine. Slowly, one by one, the students began to clap as well. Some of them had tears in their eyes. They realized that the boy they had laughed at had something extraordinary. For Leo, the moment was magical. For the first time, he felt that people were seeing him not for his differences, but for his abilities, his effort, and the music he created. Encouraged by this experience, Leo began to play more confidently in front of others. At home, his parents would invite neighbors and friends to listen to him. Each performance, no matter how small, made him braver. His music started to reflect more than just technical skill. It reflected his emotions, his hopes, and the joy he found in creating something beautiful. People who had once laughed at him began to notice his dedication and talent. They began to treat him with respect, not because he demanded it, but because he earned it through his persistence and his love for music. Leo's piano teacher, seeing his potential, suggested that he enter a small local talent show. At first, Leo was nervous. The idea of performing in front of a larger audience, including people he did not know, made him anxious. But his parents encouraged him. "You have worked so hard," his mother said softly. "This is your chance to show the world what you can do. Remember, the most important thing is that you enjoy it." His father nodded, adding, "No matter what happens, we are proud of you." With support from his family, Leo began to prepare. He practiced every day, carefully choosing a piece that was both challenging and meaningful to him. His fingers grew stronger, his timing improved, and his confidence grew. He would play in front of the mirror, imagining an audience, learning to control his nerves and expressing the emotions he felt through each note. At school, the news of his upcoming performance spread. Some children were still doubtful, but others were curious. They remembered the day he had played in class, and they wanted to see if he could do it again. For Leo, the anticipation was both exciting and frightening, but he knew that no matter what happened, he had prepared with all his heart, and that was what mattered most. The day of the talent show arrived, and the school auditorium was filled with students, teachers, and parents. Leo waited backstage, his small hands clutching the music sheet. His heart raced, and he took deep breaths to calm himself. When his name was called, he walked to the piano, feeling the weight of expectation but also the support of everyone who believed in him. He sat down, placed his fingers on the keys, and began to play. The first notes were soft, almost tentative, but soon the music began to flow. Each note carried emotion, each melody told a story. The audience was captivated. The children who had laughed at him before watched in awe. The teachers exchanged glances, impressed by the depth of feeling in his performance. Leo did not notice them. He was completely immersed in the music, letting it take him to a place where there was no fear, no laughter, only sound and emotion. By the time he finished, the room was silent for a moment, as if everyone was catching their breath. Then applause erupted, loud and heartfelt. People cheered. Some stood to show their admiration. Leo's cheeks flushed with pride and relief. He had faced the audience, faced his fears, and shared something deeply personal. He had shown that despite the laughter, despite the doubts, he had a talent that could touch hearts. From that day forward, Leo's confidence grew. He continued to practice diligently, exploring more complex pieces and learning new techniques. He started to perform at small events, each time growing more comfortable in front of an audience. People began to see him not as the boy with Down syndrome, but as a young musician with extraordinary dedication and talent. The laughter that had once followed him faded, replaced by admiration and respect. Through music, Leo discovered a powerful truth, that passion, hard work, and persistence could overcome doubt and ridicule. He learned that even when the world laughed, it was possible to rise above, to show strength, and to inspire others. The journey was not easy, and there were still moments of struggle, but each challenge made him stronger. He had found his voice through the piano, and with it, he could express everything he felt, everything he hoped for, and everything he dreamed of becoming. The journey was only beginning for Leo, but by discovering his talent and facing the world with courage, he had taken the first steps toward a future where his music could shine and where the laughter of others could no longer define him. Each note he played carried his determination, his hope, and his joy, and in every performance he shared a piece of himself that no one could ever take away. Leo's journey with music was far from easy. Even though he had discovered his talent and gained confidence from performing in front of others, he still faced challenges that tested his patience and determination. Playing the piano was no longer just about enjoying the notes. It was about mastering skills, understanding rhythms, and learning to express emotions through music. Every day he practiced with dedication, but the path was filled with obstacles that could have discouraged anyone. One afternoon, after finishing his homework, Leo sat at the piano with a new music sheet in front of him. This piece was much more complicated than anything he had tried before. The notes seemed endless and the rhythm was tricky. His small fingers struggled to reach some of the keys, and there were moments when he wanted to give up. But he remembered what his teacher had once told him. Every mistake is a step forward if you learn from it. Taking a deep breath, Leo began again, slowly pressing each key, concentrating on every note. His parents watched quietly from the doorway. They had learned to be patient, understanding that Leo's learning process was different and that he needed encouragement rather than pressure. His mother gently said, "Take your time, Leo. You can do this." His father nodded, adding, "Remember, it's not about finishing fast. It's about doing your best." These words gave Leo strength. Even when the piece seemed impossible, he focused on small victories, playing one line correctly, holding the rhythm for a few seconds, or memorizing a tricky sequence. At school, the situation was still challenging. Some children continued to tease him, whispering jokes or rolling their eyes when he tried to participate in group activities. Sometimes they would point out mistakes he made, laughing loudly to draw attention. At first, Leo would feel hurt, questioning whether he could ever succeed. But he had learned to protect himself in a quiet way. Instead of reacting, he turned his energy toward his music. The piano became his safe place, a place where mistakes were simply part of learning, not a reason for ridicule. Leo's piano teacher noticed his persistence. She could see that he had a genuine love for music, and she admired his determination. During lessons, she began to challenge him with more difficult pieces. Sometimes he would play them flawlessly, and other times he would stumble repeatedly. But the teacher never gave up on him. She offered encouragement, breaking down the music into smaller sections, teaching him techniques to strengthen his fingers and improve timing. Slowly, Leo began to see progress. Each small achievement built his confidence and deepened his connection with the piano. At home, the practice sessions became longer. Leo would stay at the piano for hours, sometimes making mistakes over and over again, but refusing to quit. His parents often brought him snacks or water, understanding that these sessions were intense and exhausting for him. Even when his fingers ached or his mind felt tired, he kept going. Music was no longer just a hobby, it was a part of who he was. Every note he played represented his effort, his determination, and his refusal to be defined by the laughter of others. Sometimes, Leo would compare himself to other children who played the piano effortlessly. He knew they learned faster and made fewer mistakes, and for a moment he felt frustrated. But then he reminded himself that everyone had their own pace, and his journey was about his growth, not theirs. He focused on what he could control, his practice, his effort, and the way he expressed himself through music. Slowly but surely he began to play more confidently, his fingers moving with increasing skill and grace. One day, his piano teacher suggested that he try playing a short composition in front of the music class. The idea of performing again made Leo nervous. He remembered the first time he had played in class when some children had laughed, even though others had clapped. Would it happen again? His parents encouraged him, telling him to focus on the music, not the audience. "You are playing for yourself first, Leo," his mother said. "The music is yours. Let them hear it, but don't let them scare you." When Leo sat at the piano that day, the classroom was quiet. His classmates watched him curiously, some skeptical, some interested. He took a deep breath, placed his hands on the keys, and began to play. The first few notes were tentative, but as he continued, his confidence grew. He felt the music in his hands flowing through his fingers, carrying his emotions to every corner of the room. For the first time, he played without thinking about the mistakes he might make. He played with feeling, letting the melody tell a story. By the time he finished, the room was silent. His classmates looked surprised, and a few whispered to each other. The teacher clapped loudly, and slowly others joined in. Leo's heart swelled with pride. He had faced the challenge and succeeded. It was not just about playing the right notes, it was about showing courage and expressing himself through music. That day, even the children who had teased him began to see him differently. They started to realize that there was more to Leo than they had imagined. Despite this success, Leo faced new challenges. Some musical pieces were too complex, and even after hours of practice, he could not play them perfectly. He would sometimes get frustrated, banging the keys in anger or covering his face in disappointment. But his parents and teacher always reminded him that mistakes were part of learning. They encouraged him to break the pieces into smaller sections, to focus on one part at a time, and to celebrate each small victory. Leo learned patience, understanding that progress was a journey, not a race. At home, Leo began experimenting more with his music. He tried creating his own melodies, combining notes in ways that expressed what he was feeling. Some tunes were soft and gentle, while others were lively and energetic. He discovered that music could tell stories without words, that it could convey joy, sadness, excitement, or calm. Each day his compositions grew more complex, and he felt a deep sense of accomplishment with every new melody he created. Leo also began to understand the importance of perseverance. Even when he stumbled, even when others laughed or doubted him, he kept trying. He learned to remind himself of the moments when he had succeeded, like the first time he had played in class or the applause he had received at the talent show. These memories gave him strength, helping him push through the difficult times. He realized that talent alone was not enough. It was hard work, patience, and persistence that allowed him to grow. Sometimes, Leo would practice late into the evening, the house quiet except for the sound of the piano. His parents often watched him from the doorway, amazed at his dedication. They saw a boy who, despite every challenge, refused to give up. His determination was inspiring, not only to them but also to the people who knew his story. Slowly, the laughter and ridicule that had once followed him began to fade. People started to see his talent, his effort, and his courage. At school, Leo began to gain more respect from his peers. Some of the children who had teased him before started asking him questions about music, curious about how he practiced or how he learned new songs. They began to understand that the boy they had laughed at had worked hard, faced challenges, and achieved something extraordinary. Leo answered their questions politely, sharing what he had learned, though he never boasted. His focus was always on improving himself, not on proving others wrong. As Leo's skills grew, so did his confidence. He began to play more complicated pieces, tackling songs that had once seemed impossible. Each successful performance, no matter how small, reinforced his belief in himself. He started to understand that talent was not just about natural ability. It was about effort, dedication, and the willingness to keep going even when things were difficult. His music became an extension of himself, a reflection of his journey, his struggles, and his triumphs. Through all of this, Leo's family remained his greatest support. They celebrated every success and comforted him during setbacks. They reminded him that his value was not measured by the opinions of others, but by his own effort, his growth, and his determination. Their encouragement helped him build resilience, teaching him that the world might be difficult at times, but with passion and persistence, he could overcome almost anything. Leo's journey in this stage of his life was about more than just learning to play the piano. It was about learning patience, resilience, and self-belief. He discovered that challenges were not obstacles to stop him, but opportunities to grow. Each mistake taught him something new. Each setback tested his determination, and each small success built his confidence. Music became both a teacher and a friend, guiding him through the difficulties of childhood and helping him discover his inner strength. By the end of this period, Leo was no longer just a boy who loved to press piano keys. He was a young musician, dedicated, passionate, and resilient. He had faced mockery, overcome frustration, and learned the value of hard work. More importantly, he had discovered that his love for music could carry him through challenges, connect him with others, and allow him to express himself in ways that words could not. The laughter that had once followed him still existed in the background, but it no longer defined him. Leo had begun to understand that what truly mattered was not the judgment of others, but his own effort, growth, and the joy he found in creating music. His journey was far from over, but he had taken important steps toward becoming the musician he dreamed of being. Each note he played, each melody he created, and each challenge he faced brought him closer to that dream. The day of the big performance had finally arrived. Leo had been preparing for weeks, practicing every day, refining every note, and imagining the moment he would sit at the piano in front of the audience. His heart was full of excitement, but also a little fear. The thought of performing for so many people, some of whom had laughed at him in the past, made him nervous. He tried to focus on what he had learned and the hours of practice he had put in. He reminded himself that the most important thing was to enjoy the music and express what he felt. The school auditorium was buzzing with energy. Children, parents, teachers, and neighbors had gathered to watch the talent show. The stage was set, the lights were bright, and the piano waited at the center. Backstage, Leo's parents adjusted his shirt and gently held his hands. "You are ready," his mother said softly, looking into his eyes. "No matter what happens, we are proud of you." His father smiled and added, "Just play from your heart. Leo, the music will speak for itself." Leo nodded, taking a deep breath, feeling comforted by their words. When it was time for him to perform, the announcer called his name. A hush fell over the audience. Leo walked onto the stage slowly, his small hands trembling slightly. He sat down at the piano, placed his fingers on the keys, and looked out at the crowd. Some faces were familiar, friendly, supportive, but others held curiosity or doubt. He felt the weight of their eyes on him, but he also felt the weight of his preparation, his practice, and his love for music. He reminded himself that this moment was his and the piano was his voice. Leo began to play. The first notes were soft, almost hesitant, as he focused on the rhythm and the melody. Slowly, the music began to flow, each note clear and full of feeling. His fingers moved with growing confidence, dancing across the keys. The audience was silent, captivated by the boy who had once been laughed at. Each note carried emotion, telling a story without words. The laughter and mockery from the past seemed far away, replaced by the sound of music that was both delicate and powerful. As he continued, Leo closed his eyes, letting the music guide him. He had practiced this piece countless times, but this was different. The audience, the stage, the energy of the room, it all made the performance feel alive. He felt the rhythm in his fingers, the melody in his heart, and the emotion in every chord. For the first time, he was not thinking about mistakes or judgment. He was fully immersed in the music, and it was beautiful. In the audience, people began to notice the change in him. The children who had once mocked him sat quietly, their mouths slightly open as they listened to the music. Teachers exchanged glances, amazed at the depth of feeling in the performance. Parents leaned forward in their seats, some with tears in their eyes, touched by the boy who had transformed the stage into a place of magic and emotion. The melody carried them along, soft and gentle at times, strong and vibrant at others, expressing joy, hope, and determination. Leo's parents watched from the side, their hearts swelling with pride. They had seen his journey from the beginning, the struggles, the practice, the determination, and the resilience. And now they were witnessing the result. Their son, who had faced ridicule and doubt, was standing strong and showing the world his true talent. They felt a mixture of pride, awe, and happiness, knowing that this moment was a milestone in his life. The music reached its climax, the notes flowing faster and stronger. Leo's fingers moved with precision and emotion, each chord building upon the last. The audience was completely captivated, holding their breath as they listened. The boy they had underestimated was now commanding the room with his talent. There was no laughter, no doubt, only admiration and awe. Every note seemed to touch the hearts of those watching, and for the first time, Leo felt that he had truly communicated something powerful and meaningful. As the final notes echoed through the auditorium, there was a moment of silence. The audience seemed unable to move, as if absorbing the beauty of what they had just witnessed. Then slowly applause began. A few people clapped at first, then more, until the entire room erupted in cheers. Some people stood, clapping their hands and calling out words of praise. Tears filled the eyes of many, moved by the performance of a boy who had once been laughed at but had now proven his courage and talent. Leo opened his eyes and looked at the audience. The sight of so many people applauding and smiling at him made his heart swell. He felt proud, not because he had silenced the doubters, but because he had shared something deeply personal, something that came from his heart. The music had allowed him to express himself in a way that words could not, and now everyone could feel it. After the performance, teachers, parents, and classmates approached him to congratulate him. They praised his dedication, his talent, and the emotion in his music. Even some of the children who had once mocked him now looked at him with respect and admiration. Leo smiled shyly, feeling a mixture of relief and happiness. He had faced his fears, played from his heart, and won the admiration of everyone in the room. That evening, as the auditorium emptied and the lights dimmed, Leo's parents took him home. They talked about the performance, praising his effort and the way he had expressed himself. "You did something amazing today," his mother said. "You didn't just play the piano, you told a story and everyone felt it." His father added, "We are so proud of you. You have shown courage, patience, and talent. Remember this feeling, Leo. It is the result of your hard work." Leo felt a warmth in his chest, a mixture of pride, happiness, and fulfillment. He realized that the performance was more than just an achievement. It was proof that he could overcome challenges, face fears, and express himself fully. The journey had not been easy, but every hour of practice, every mistake, and every moment of determination had led to this moment. He understood that music was not just about playing notes correctly. It was about sharing a piece of himself with the world. In the days that followed, the performance became a turning point for Leo. People in the school and neighborhood began to see him differently. They admired his dedication and respected his talent. Some children who had teased him before began to ask him about music, curious to learn from him. Teachers praised his hard work and encouraged him to continue pursuing his passion. Leo realized that the laughter and doubt from the past no longer had power over him. He had shown that dedication, courage, and heart could change perceptions and inspire others. Leo continued to practice every day, exploring new pieces and creating his own melodies. Each performance, no matter how small, became an opportunity to express himself and grow as a musician. The applause, admiration, and respect he received were not what drove him. It was the joy of playing, the beauty of the music, and the knowledge that he could overcome challenges through persistence and passion. Through this experience, Leo learned an important lesson: that talent alone is not enough. It is courage, determination, patience, and the willingness to keep going that truly make a difference. The boy who had once been laughed at had faced his fears, worked tirelessly, and shared his heart with the world. He had transformed not only the way others saw him, but also the way he saw himself. Leo's story became an inspiration for many. People realized that differences do not define limitations and that every individual has unique talents that can shine if nurtured with love, patience, and determination. Leo's courage and dedication showed that even when the world laughs at you, it is possible to rise above, to express yourself, and to touch the hearts of others. As he prepared for future performances, Leo carried the memory of this moment with him. The standing ovation, the applause, the smiles of admiration, all of it reminded him of what he could achieve when he believed in himself and trusted his abilities. Each time he sat at the piano, he thought of the audience that had once doubted him and how he had shown them the power of persistence and passion. Music had given Leo a voice that no one could ignore. It had allowed him to communicate his feelings, his joy, and his determination. It had transformed his fear into confidence, his doubt into pride, and his challenges into triumphs. The piano was no longer just an instrument. It was a bridge between him and the world, a way to show who he truly was and what he was capable of achieving. Leo knew that more challenges would come, but he also knew that he could face them. He had learned that mistakes were opportunities to grow, that practice and effort led to improvement, and that courage was the key to overcoming fear. His performance had shown him that when he played with his heart, he could touch people's lives, inspire them, and earn their respect. This performance was not the end of Leo's journey. It was a milestone, a moment that marked the beginning of greater things. The boy who had been laughed at had now won hearts, and he understood the true meaning of perseverance, passion, and self-expression. He had proven to himself and others that talent combined with hard work and courage could create magic, and that magic could change the way the world sees you. After the standing ovation, Leo felt a mixture of relief, pride, and joy. He had faced the audience, played from his heart, and shared a part of himself through music. The applause still echoed in his ears as he stepped away from the piano. For the first time, he felt that the world was seeing him for who he truly was, not as a boy with Down syndrome, but as a talented, determined, and passionate young musician. This realization filled him with a sense of accomplishment that he had never felt before. Backstage, his parents embraced him tightly. "You were amazing, Leo," his mother whispered, tears in her eyes. "You have shown everyone how strong and talented you are." His father nodded, smiling proudly. "We always knew you could do it, but seeing it happen is even more wonderful. You didn't just play music, you touched hearts." Leo hugged them back, feeling their pride and support wrap around him like a warm blanket. The encouragement of his parents had always been his anchor, and now he understood just how important it had been. Word of Leo's performance spread quickly. Teachers and students talked about the boy who had surprised everyone, the boy who had once been laughed at but now commanded respect through his music. People began to see that Leo's abilities went far beyond what anyone had expected. Even those who had doubted him could not help but admire his courage, dedication, and talent. Leo realized that the world could be unpredictable, but hard work, determination, and passion could create opportunities that no one could take away. Encouraged by this recognition, Leo continued to practice diligently. Each day he explored new musical pieces, challenged himself with more complex compositions, and experimented with creating his own melodies. He had learned that improvement came through patience, focus, and consistent effort. When mistakes happened, he did not let them discourage him. Instead, he treated them as lessons, reminders that progress was a journey, not a race. Over time, he grew stronger, more skilled, and more confident in his abilities. Leo's piano teacher remained an important guide in his journey. She pushed him gently, encouraging him to refine his technique and explore the emotional depth of each piece. "Music is not just about playing the right notes," she explained. "It is about telling a story, sharing your feelings, and connecting with the listener." Leo absorbed this advice and began to play with even more expression. He discovered that music could convey happiness, sadness, excitement, or calmness, sometimes all within a single song. It became a language through which he could communicate everything he felt. At school, Leo's peers began to treat him differently. Some who had mocked him before now approached him with curiosity and respect. They asked about his practice, how he learned the songs, and how he managed to play with such emotion. Leo answered their questions kindly, sharing what he had learned and encouraging them to explore music for themselves. He had not sought their approval, but their recognition was gratifying and reminded him of how far he had come. Leo's confidence in himself also began to grow outside of music. He became more willing to participate in classroom activities, try new challenges, and speak up in discussions. The courage he had gained through performing in front of others translated into other areas of his life. He learned that facing fear and taking risks could lead to growth, recognition, and personal satisfaction. The lessons of perseverance, patience, and dedication were no longer limited to the piano. They became part of who he was. At home, Leo's parents continued to support him in every way possible. They celebrated every success, no matter how small, and comforted him during setbacks. They encouraged him to practice regularly, but also reminded him to rest and enjoy the journey. They taught him that talent alone was not enough. It had to be paired with hard work, determination, and resilience. Leo absorbed these lessons, applying them to his music and to the way he approached life. Leo's story began to inspire others. Teachers, neighbors, and friends admired his courage and dedication. Some parents who knew of his journey encouraged their own children to pursue their passions, regardless of challenges. The boy who had once been laughed at had become a symbol of hope, showing that determination and talent could overcome doubt and prejudice. Leo's music was no longer just a personal joy. It was a source of inspiration for everyone around him. As months passed, Leo continued to perform at local events, gaining confidence and skill with each appearance. Every performance was an opportunity to share his story, express his emotions, and connect with others through music. He understood that each time he played, he was not only demonstrating his talent, but also showing the world that perseverance, courage, and passion could change perceptions. He had learned that success was not measured solely by applause or recognition, but by the effort, growth, and joy that came from pursuing what he loved. Despite the recognition, Leo remained humble. He knew that his journey was ongoing and that there would always be new challenges to face. He continued to practice daily, refine his technique, and explore new musical ideas. He discovered that there was always more to learn, new emotions to express, and new ways to connect with his audience. This mindset kept him motivated and eager to continue growing as a musician and as a person. One day, after a performance at a community event, a young child approached Leo, eyes wide with admiration. "I want to play the piano like you someday," the child said shyly. Leo smiled warmly. "Keep practicing and don't give up," he replied. "Everyone learns at their own pace, and mistakes are part of the journey. Just enjoy the music and it will guide you." The child nodded, inspired by Leo's words and his example. Leo realized that his music could inspire not only adults but also other children, showing them that determination and passion could lead to extraordinary achievements. Leo also began to understand the deeper impact of his journey. He had faced mockery, doubts, and challenges, yet he had persisted and shared his talent with the world. People were no longer laughing at him. They were listening, learning, and feeling the emotions in his music. He had shown that differences did not define limitations, and that every individual, no matter their challenges, had unique gifts to offer. This understanding gave him a sense of purpose beyond performing. He wanted to encourage others to follow their passions and believe in themselves. At home, Leo's family continued to nurture his talent and support his growth. They celebrated each milestone, from mastering a difficult piece to performing confidently in front of an audience. They encouraged him to try new styles of music, experiment with improvisation, and explore the emotional depth of each composition. Leo thrived in this environment, growing not only as a musician but also as a young person with confidence, resilience, and compassion. Leo's journey had taught him many lessons. He had learned that hard work and patience were essential for growth, that mistakes were opportunities to learn, and that courage was necessary to face challenges. Most importantly, he had discovered that true talent was not just about natural ability, but about dedication, perseverance, and the willingness to share one's passion with others. These lessons extended far beyond music, shaping the way he approached life, relationships, and challenges. As he continued to perform and practice, Leo began to dream of the future. He imagined playing in larger venues, sharing his music with more people and inspiring others through his journey. He understood that the road ahead would not always be easy, but he felt prepared to face whatever challenges came his way. He had already overcome so much, and he knew that his passion, determination, and love for music would guide him through any obstacle. Leo's story became a symbol of hope and inspiration for his community. People admired his courage, dedication, and talent, and they shared his story with others. Teachers encouraged students to pursue their passions, parents inspired their children to believe in themselves, and children looked to Leo as an example of what could be achieved through hard work and determination. The boy who had once been laughed at had transformed into a source of inspiration, proving that anyone, regardless of challenges, could achieve greatness with effort and perseverance. Through all of this, Leo never lost sight of why he loved music. It was not the applause, recognition, or admiration that motivated him. It was the joy of creating, expressing, and sharing something deeply personal. Music had become his voice, his refuge, and his way of connecting with the world. It had taught him resilience, patience, and courage, and it had allowed him to touch the hearts of everyone who listened. Looking back on his journey, Leo realized how far he had come. From the boy who had been laughed at and underestimated, he had grown into a confident, skilled, and passionate young musician. He had faced challenges, overcome fears, and transformed doubt into triumph. Most importantly, he had discovered that talent, dedication, and courage could inspire others and create change in the world. Leo's journey was a testament to the power of perseverance and passion. He had shown that laughter and doubt could not define him, that obstacles were opportunities for growth, and that sharing one's gifts could touch hearts and inspire others. His story became a reminder that everyone has unique talents, and that with determination, courage, and patience, it is possible to achieve extraordinary things. As Leo continued to play, practice, and grow, he carried with him the lessons of his journey, the importance of resilience, the value of patience, and the power of passion. He understood that the world would not always be easy, but he also knew that he had the strength to face challenges, the dedication to improve, and the heart to inspire others. The boy who had once been laughed at had not only found his voice through music, but had also shown the world the incredible potential that lies within every individual. Leo's music continued to touch lives, inspire confidence, and bring joy to everyone who heard it. His journey, marked by struggle, determination, and triumph, became a story that people remembered, a story that showed that courage, passion, and dedication could overcome even the harshest challenges. The boy who had once faced laughter had now won hearts, and his story would continue to inspire for years to come.